The Passion Chorale is well known and well loved by the Church. The text dates back to the 1200s to the medieval Latin poem Membra Jesu Nostri, a series of meditations on the 7 wounds of the crucified Christ, which were developed into the chant Salve Munde Salutare. The 7 wounds are pedes, feet, genua, knees, manus, hands, latus, side, pectus, breast, core, heart, and facium, face. The original words were so overly graphic, saturated with blood, sweat, tears, and lacerating wounds, that later editors toned them down significantly. For a long time, the text was attributed to the 12th century abbot Bernard of Clairvaux. It is now thought to be the work of Arnulf of Louvain, the 13th century abbot of Villiers. Paul Gerhardt reworked these old texts 500 years later, creating 7 German hymns. Considered Germany's greatest hymn writer, his last hymn of those 7 was O Haupt voll Blut und Wunden, O Head full of blood and wounds, which became our O Sacred Head Now Wounded, published in 1656. Gerhardt was born in 1607 into a middle-class family in Greifenhainichen, Germany. He was orphaned at 14. He went into the gymnasium, or the school, in Grimma and graduated in 1627. Then, a year later, he enrolled at the University of Wittenberg, where he learned the Lutheran teaching of using hymnody as a tool of pastoral care and instruction, and upon graduation was sent to Berlin to await his pastoral assignment. In Berlin, he met Johann Kugger, the cantor and organist at Berlin's St. Nicholas Church, who greatly admired Gerhardt's poems, including many in his hymnal, the Praxis Pietatis Melica, Practice of Piety in Song, the most widely used Lutheran hymnal of the 17th century. Their longtime friendship and collaboration made them the dynamic duo of 17th century Lutheran hymnody. Gerhardt died in 1676. A statue stands in front of the church in Leuben, Germany, where he served his last pastorate. Dietrich Buxtehude, who was Bach's teacher, composed a cycle of 7 cantatas on the text in 1680, called Membra Jesu Nostri. This work is known as the first Lutheran oratorio. Our evangelical Lutheran worship text is a composite of the 1830 translation of the Reverend James Waldo Alexander, mixed with translations from other sources. James Alexander was born in Hopewell, Louisa County, Virginia, in 1804. He was educated at Princeton, where he followed in the footsteps of his daddy, who was the first professor at Princeton Seminary. He alternated his career between teaching as a professor and serving as pastor of Fifth Avenue Presbyterian Church in New York City. His translation of O Sacred Head Now Wounded was published in 1861 in the Breaking Crucible and other translations. He died in Sweet Springs, Virginia in 1859. You might recall that the Passion Chorale was the tune for Our Father, We Have Wandered, our hymn of the day for the 15th Sunday after Pentecost. Our composer is Hans Leo Hessler, born in Nuremberg in 1564 an eminent Lutheran composer and organist of the German Renaissance. He began his musical training under his papa Isaac, who was the organist and town musician in Nuremberg. In 1584, he was sent for further study to Venice, where he and his fellow pupil Giovanni Gabrieli learned the polychoral style from Giovanni's uncle Andrea Gabrieli, who was the organist at St. Mark's. A year later, he was recalled to Germany to become private organist to Count Octavian II of the fabulously wealthy House of Fugger, the great merchant prince and art patron of Augsburg. Hessler and his brothers were granted nobility in 1595 by Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II. 1600 was an important year in his life. Hessler journeyed to Prague to serve as Emperor Rudolph's court organist, as well as working as a maker of musical clocks. That year, he was also appointed organist at Frauenkirche in Nuremberg and music director for the city of Augsburg. And finally, he was appointed court musician for Christian II, the Elector of Saxony in Dresden. He composed our tune for a popular forlorn love song, Mein Gemüt ist mir verwirrt, which was printed in Lustgarten Neuer Teuscher Gesang. Here's a sampling of the forerunner of today's Cry in Your Beer country western songs. In 1613's Harmoniae Sacrae, the tune was first adapted to the sacred words Herzlich tut mir verlangen, a prayer for blessed death. Johann Sebastian Bach arranged the melody and used 5 stanzas of this hymn in 4 different settings in his St. Matthew Passion, as well as in some of his cantatas and the Christmas Oratorio. Here's a lovely arrangement by David Charwin and the National Lutheran Chorale.